Okay, so I want to go over this amplifier project I've taken on. I discovered this kind of looking around on the internet, and on Facebook Marketplace I saw an ad with a bunch of broken gear, and this was one of them. And I went over to eBay and looked up this particular machine, this amplifier, and found some examples on there that were less than 50 bucks. And I batted it around for like a week and pulled the trigger and ordered one of these units, and it came pretty quickly, and it was listed as untested, and it's a solid state amplifier. This is the is it Bogen. I've seen this brand for many years, and anytime I've ever seen it I would just think Bogen, but it's the Acoustimaster, and the model is the CT-60. It's a solid state, and the 60 in CT-60 means 60 watts, I believe, and this is a PA, a powered amplifier, and these would be used for, it has 4 microphone inputs, and it gives you this EQ stage. But what intrigued me about this one was seeing the word compression and a dial for compression on the front of it. And I just thought, boy, anything that has microphone inputs and has built-in compression is very interesting to me, because maybe it's got some mojo to it, something that'd be cool for drums, or maybe just a particular color and sound that would be a interesting tool to use for recording. But there's some modifications that I've made to this unit, and to actually make it something that I could use. When I first got it, I plugged it in, everything seemed to be working, but the compression was actually pretty disappointing. The manual says that the attack time on the compression is 5 milliseconds, and the decay is 2 seconds. Or decay, I would assume, is the same thing as release. That's very slow for both of those. I think it calls it a limiter compressor, and I feel like for a limiter compressor, those are pretty slow times, where I would imagine something more like 2 to 3 milliseconds on attack, and maybe more like 500 milliseconds instead of 2 seconds for the release. But when tinkering around with it, it seems to be set up for low impedance microphones, and it was kind of overdriving when I was close on the mic and getting loud and testing it. And I kind of thought, is there something wrong? And I used the schematic, and it has voltage readings, and I checked around all the transistors, and everything just seemed to be in spec. There was no failed looking capacitors. The age of this unit, I believe, would be something like, if it looks like it would be like the 70s, the 80s maybe, early 80s. The 4 inputs, each microphone input has a transformer. Now, the mods that I've done to this, there's the microphone preamp board is right here, and there was a second board which is sitting here. The way that they designed it was, this thing was actually mounted upside down over top of here, like so. And the way that they have these transformers like this, it's set up where they could put these right over top, and none of the components would interfere with one another. I just thought that was, these boards are actually identical, but when you put them on top of one another, they can get, almost sandwiched, and they don't interfere with one another. I just thought that was pretty slick in the circuit board design. Now, one thing I did notice, though, is that these microphone inputs have transformers on them, and those are pretty rad. Those are the TM200As, set up, I believe, for microphones with impedances of 200 ohms. Now, I was using a Shure SM58 with my testing, and that, on the side of it, I believe it says like 50 and then 150 ohm impedance. So I don't know if that was probably why I was getting a little bit of an overdriven sound when I got loud into that microphone, being that this is rated for 200 ohms. Well, that's got a little rust on there, but you can see it a little better on these other ones here. Let's see, right Focusing on that. Yeah, 200 TM200A. They were all TM200As, but yeah, I was missing one of them. And I mean, I'm only going to use one input at a time with something like this, so I really didn't need all four of them. And yeah, the some other things I thought were kind of interesting about it too was the microphone inputs on the back. Well, I've taped these off because the way I've modified it, I'm not using those inputs. But what's weird is that the input for it, that's the same way the connector on the microphone would look. So, you know, there's the bottom of your SM58. They're the same connection, and normally it's not this one. It's the other way around. Let me just find a. All right. So normally the microphone inputs on mixers would be like this style, but instead it was this. And instead of drilling these out and trying to making this work with this and drilling holes in the panel here, and just seemed like a lot of fuss. I just took two XLR patch cables and took the end off the one and just customized it so that I had an adapter cable that would go from here to here, you know, having the same end on both ends of the cable. And then you can just use an additional XLR microphone cable to make it any longer. Actually, I have yeah, here it is. So this is basically, I just took a microphone cable and just put this end on both sides. And so that's how I was doing my microphone testing with the unit. On the back here, you have your power transistors. Gosh, what was that? I don't feel like taking that off. Yeah, whatever. Shit. Your outputs, you have bridging and tape output, and those are, I believe, according to the schematic, those are reflecting. Those are all the inputs summed for bridging, but doesn't include any of the master volume, the compression, or the EQ. And then the tape out, I believe, has the master volume and compression, but doesn't have the EQ. And you know, for hooking this thing up to like your another mixer for sort of just using this as a microphone preamp, those outputs seem to be not ideal, because I kind of want all the circuitry and, you know, even the EQ to kind of shape the sound a little bit. So according to the owner's manual, the tape booster output gives you all that circuitry, because the tape booster output is over here. It's actually after the output transformer, which is right there. And that gives you not only the circuit, the whole circuit, you know, the color of all that circuit, but also the vibe of that particular output transformer. So your signal would come in through here, go into the transformer, so an input transformer, go through this solid state mojo here, and then come out of this output transformer to a RCA connection, line level. And yeah, I was getting pretty cool sounds with it. I recorded voice testing, and I did drum testing, and it overdrives a little bit, so it's got some crunch to it. And I thought, you know, that could be a particular character for recordings I might want to do. But there's also, because this is a power amplifier, the ability to hook up speakers to it. So it gives you different impedance connections here, and it has speaker sockets for speaker connectors I don't have. But some nice things about some other attributes to this machine too is that its power cord is 3-prong. And it gives you one of those extra sockets for adding another piece of equipment in the mix. Then in testing, I didn't find anything to be bad, you know, capacitor wise. Everything looked good. So what I did next was decide really what am I going to do with this unit. And I spent a lot of time just studying the schematic, just trying to figure it out. And pretty well all this is the input stage right here, and it's just the same circuit times 4, because it's 4 microphone inputs. and that goes in over here. And this section up here is where the compression and the master volume happens. And then in this little area down here, you have the graphic EQ. And then down here is power supply. And then this is the output stage. Once I kind of wrapped my head around it, I started considering what exactly I might want to do with this thing. And considering that one of those transformers was missing, when I was looking at the schematic, I kind of determined that if the transformer's missing, you know, your microphone connections here goes into the transformer and focus. And after the transformer, where it has, you know, basically your two different polarities, your hot and your cold coming into the transformer, out of the transformer you have a single line. It hits a 1K resistor and then a 100 nanofarad capacitor, and it goes into this transistor here and comes out and then ties in with the other channel, which then goes in and just ties in to enter this stage. And I thought, what about, since I'm missing one of these transformers, what if I connected an input to right here to this 1K? That looks kind of similar to a lot of input stages on effects pedals that I've studied. So I decided to give that a shot and maybe consider this not just a microphone preamp for maybe vocals or drums, but what if I have instrument inputs and connect a speaker to it and kind of consider this more like a guitar amplifier. So not needing all four inputs, I removed the one board, which was mic 1, mic 2, and then mic 3 still has its transformer, and the mic 4 is missing it, so I'm going to use that circuit. So I made the inputs have their ground tap into the same ground on here, which I noticed that the way that they have these set up, they have shielded cabling, and that the inputs are shielded from their ground is set. It's not just directly connected to the chassis. And when I took a normal 1/4-inch jack, which just has like a metal connection, by putting it in the panel, it was making the ground connect to the chassis ground, and I had a little bit of noise. But if I use these plastic 1/4-inch connectors here, you know, they're all plastic in the housing, and then your connections are, you know, within the plastic housing. And with that, using the ground connection on that and tapping into the way that they have it grounded in their circuit, it was a lot quieter than just having the normal 1/4-inch jack and being connected to the ground, the chassis ground. By taking out this board, I lost the two top controls, and I was really only needing one input. But I was like, what am I going to do with this other hole here from the way where the other pot was mounted? And I just decided just to put two jacks in there and then have them tie together with two 100 ohm resistors, and then that goes into the circuit and ties into the, I believe that is R3 to a 1K resistor. And I got the results. It worked, and it was really cool because you know, you have EQ, so you can go into here, and then you go in. You have compression, which I just really wasn't satisfied with. The compression really lets transients through, and playing guitar, it was, you know, it kind of almost be like a pop if you with like guitar using a guitar pick. But you know, you can color the sound with your EQ. And being that this is a 60 watt, this thing gets really loud. I was using this 12-inch speaker here, and yeah, I mean, I was really only getting master control at like 1 or 2, and driving the input for this up to like maximum to get like crunch and distortion, and then backing it off. And I just felt like it just had so much potential with its range of sound, with how much you can drive it to get overdrive or just have like a clean sound. And yeah, let's see, what else was there. Well, so then the speaker connection with these screwed type terminals, that's kind of a pain in the ass because most speaker cabinets want to use a 1/4-inch connection. So I added another one of these style jacks where it's isolated, because if I used a metal, like a typical metal 1/4 inch connection, it would be grounding to the chassis ground, and these are all isolated and not connected to the chassis ground. And so I just kind of followed suit like I did with these input connections, where I used the ground that's provided with this strip right here. So I decided to tap into the ground on this goes to common 1 ground here, and the tip of the jack is connected to the 8 ohm connection. And yeah, labeled that. I took used my typewriter, just typed on paper, and then used clear tape to label it. Same thing with the front. Mic 4 inputs. And I thought the benefit too with having 2 of them is that I could run like stereo signals into it and process like a stereo signal and amplify it through the speaker, or just run it through the tape booster output just to kind of get the color of it and overdrive it and kind of get the character that way. But yeah, the modifications of this were pretty simple, and I kind of wasn't certain. You know, when I got it, I thought like, do I really need this? But after kind of realizing how I could use it in different ways, I'm really excited about putting this to use as a guitar amplifier. More so than using it for the microphone aspects, but it seems like you could use this to record drums with the microphone inputs, or you could use it to record guitar. You could use it to record vocals. It feels like you could record a whole song with this thing, and it would be kind of fun to see what the results would be if you kind of had everything going through this particular machine and stacking that all on top of one another. Maybe I should do a sound test on this. Master at 2, input at 2. Master at 10. Hurts my ears. It's probably it's probably distorting on this microphone on this phone camera, but it gets super loud. Let me turn the compression. Let's go maximum compression. Let me do a microphone input test on this thing. Okay, so I got a SM58 hooked up to it, and the master is only on 1. And let me just crack open the microphone input. So that's probably at about a 1-2. It doesn't have that little aluminum ring with the numbers on it, but it's barely open. And with this EQ, you can push up your low end. You could push up your high end. There we go. A little crispy. But yeah, I'll cut my low end there, get that boxy sound out. I mean, if you drive the microphone input, I mean, it's got so much room. And yeah, there we go. Yeah, being that this is a powered amplifier, I feel like this would be set up for a very large space, and getting really driving, you know, some pretty big speakers. But using this as a guitar amplifier, you know, I don't. This thing's this is some homemade stuff. It's got some buzz and rattle to it, but yeah, using it for a microphone preamp, I don't have any complaints about it. Yeah, if you, yeah, when I first got it, the microphone, the output transformer kind of buzzed when I would get very loud into it, and it stopped doing that. I think maybe it just needed to warm up and kind of like learn how to work again, but it stopped doing that buzzing and vibrating when I would put in louder signals. But then again, I wasn't using a speaker on the output, so I wasn't getting feedback issues. I was coming out of that tape booster output and kind of just using this as a preamp and going out line level, and I had the channel input like maxed out, and with that maxed out and even with the master low, I was getting like an overdriven sound. But in a practical use or having a speaker hooked up to it, I mean, I have the levels pretty low, and I don't have any of that distortion or overdriven crunch to it. So, I mean, it's clean. I don't hear any humming or any noise like that. It's a very, I think this is a well-built machine. Kind of tempted to get another one and just to kind of have it's nice to have two of whatever in case one breaks. But, well, I think that's enough for now. This video is probably way too long. I think this thing's a beast, and I think it can handle some work.